The vastness of space was not silent. Not entirely. Not when humanity's forgotten ghosts decided to speak. The encrypted signal surged through the Eridani expanse, traveling faster than light itself, bouncing through relay stations, slicing through bureaucratic networks, and tripping a dozen classified security protocols. The Terran hegemony navy, once the undisputed force of the known galaxy, wasn't prepared for a voice it had long since consigned to oblivion. A voice speaking in an ancient human dialect, but carrying technology and encryption far beyond anything Earth had ever developed. Captain Ilara Vasquez stood on the bridge of the TSV reclaimer, her gaze locked onto the holo display. The message played on repeat, its meaning simple but laced with something deeply unsettling. You abandoned us. We are not yours to find. Every syllable struck with precision, as if the sender knew exactly how it would resonate, as if it was not a warning but a declaration. Ilara's jaw tightened. She had seen the classified archives, the ones that politicians swore never existed, the ones that spoke of Project Eridani, a colony mission launched over 5 centuries ago, lost to history, erased from public record, a failed venture. Or so Earth's bureaucrats wanted to believe. But the colony hadn't failed. It had survived, and it had learned to speak again. The hegemony's high command, shaken from their complacency, ordered an immediate expeditionary mission. The orders were simple: confirm, assess, control. Simple, but not easy. The moment the fleet breached the Eridani system, their sensors registered the impossible. Orbiting the long-forgotten world were artificial megastructures, stations of impossible scale, vast rings, orbital tethers, and Dyson cluster energy collectors, technology that should not exist. Not for a colony that had been left to die. Not for a civilization that had been erased from the books. Then the alarm shrieked. Something was moving. Stealth ships, not Terran, not alien, something else entirely, moved like shadows against the void. They emerged from the black like predators circling a weakened prey, weaving in and out of sensor range with frightening precision. Then, with mathematical efficiency, they struck. FTL drives disabled, power systems disrupted, entire warships crippled, without a single explosion, no kill shots, no warnings, just absolute control. And then finally the voice returned. Cold, measured, unforgiving. You are trespassing in Dominion space. No mention of Terra, no reference to their shared history, only a single brutal fact. Your kind is no longer welcome here. Helpless under the grip of superior tactics and unknown technology. Vasquez and her crew were escorted, no, taken, to the massive construct orbiting the colony's homeworld. As they descended through its layers, they saw it all. Skyscrapers of metal and glass piercing the void, cities suspended in gravity-controlled arrays, ships unlike anything Earth had ever built, moving with eerie synchronization. And the people, not humans as Vasquez knew them, something more, faster, stronger, their movements sharper, their eyes keener, their expressions unreadable. These were not survivors. These were masters of an empire unseen, and at their heart stood the one who called herself High Chancellor Lysara Caney, the ruler of the Celestial Dominion. She met Vasquez's gaze across the vast chamber, her presence radiating authority, intelligence, and something dangerously close to disdain. You are what remains of a civilization that abandoned its own, she said, her voice sharp and deliberate. Vasquez squared her shoulders. We came to reconnect, to understand. Lysara tilted her head, a slow, analytical movement. You came to see. If we were yours to claim again. A pause. Waited. Absolute. We are not. The bridge between past and present had been burned. And now humanity would finally face the ghosts it tried to forget. Silence lingered between Vasquez and Lysara Caney, thick as the void beyond the chamber's towering windows. The High Chancellor's gaze, cold and unyielding, bore into the Terran officer like a dissecting scalpel. There was no anger, no visible hatred, only a quiet, unwavering certainty. We are not yours, Lysara repeated, her words laced with finality. The implication was clear. They had never been lost. They had never been waiting to be found. Vasquez took a slow breath, her mind racing. She had expected hostility, even wariness, but not this level of certainty, not this complete rejection of everything Terran. She glanced around the chamber. Everything, from the sleek polished black floors to the walls pulsing with faint living circuitry, radiated impossibly advanced technology. The air was cool, rich with the scent of something alien, yet familiar. This was not a struggling colony. This was an empire, a civilization that had built itself in complete isolation, and now it wanted nothing to do with its ancestors. But why? Vasquez needed to know. Her crew stood in restrained formation behind her, stripped of their weapons but still watchful, tense. Among them, Dr. Soren Patel, the mission's historian, was barely suppressing his awe. His trained eyes absorbed everything: the cultural markers, the technological mastery, the deliberate absence of Earth's influence. There was no Terran flag, no remnants of old-world languages, no statues of lost leaders. Instead, the chamber bore the symbol of the Dominion, a spiraling sun, engulfed by a sphere, a celestial body bending space itself to its will. They hadn't just survived. They had transcended. Patel whispered under his breath, voice tinged with reluctant admiration. This is a different humanity. Lysara heard him. Her gaze flicked to the historian, and for the first time, the corners of her lips curved ever so slightly. No, her voice was smooth, controlled. We are not a different humanity. We are humanity. Freed. Vasquez's jaw tensed. Freed from what? Lysara's expression hardened. From you. A flick of Lysara's fingers and the chamber darkened. Then, a holographic projection bloomed, flickering to life like a waking god. The images were ancient, grainy logs, worn audio files, broken transmissions. Vasquez recognized them instantly. Terran High Command, 500 years ago. She saw the desperate faces of the first colonists, their voices pleading, their supplies dwindling. This is Eridani Outpost 01. Colony status, critical. We have lost primary FTL function. We require immediate extraction or supply drops. We repeat. The transmission stuttered, then cut off abruptly. Another log played. Hegemony command, do you read? We have encountered something. Something we can't explain. We need silence. More recordings followed. Some garbled beyond recognition, some too painful to hear. Then, one final transmission. A voice, weary, defeated. The last recorded message from Eridani's first governor. To anyone who hears this, we have accepted the truth. A ragged breath. Earth is not coming. We are alone. Another pause. We will not beg anymore. We will endure. The recording ended. The room remained deathly silent. Vasquez's breath felt tight in her chest. They knew. The hegemony had known about Eridani's survival, and they had left them to die. Not because they couldn't help, because they chose not. Lysara gestured, and the holograms vanished. You understand now, she said. We were not forgotten, we were discarded. Her tone was not angry, not grief-stricken, just stating a fact, and that made it worse. Vasquez clenched her fists. That was centuries ago. The words felt hollow even as she said them. Things are different now. Lysara studied her for a long moment. Then, with deliberate precision, she activated another display. This time, it wasn't history. It was now. Battle reports, surveillance footage, the latest Terran conflicts with alien species, the endless cycle of war, diplomacy, and betrayal. The hegemony wasn't a beacon of progress. It was a machine, consuming the galaxy in the name of unity. Lysara stepped forward, looking Vasquez in the eyes. You think you came here to reconnect, but your leaders, your hegemony? She let the words sink in. They came to assess whether we are a threat. Another pause. And now, they will know the answer. A low vibration rippled through the chamber. Something had changed. Vasquez's communicator flared with frantic warnings. Lieutenant Kayadama's voice crackled through the static. "Captain, our fleet, our systems are compromised." The transmission cut out. Outside the massive window, the Dominion's ships moved in eerie synchronization. Vasquez turned back to Lysara, her heart pounding. "What have you done?" Lysara's expression remained unreadable. "We are ensuring our survival." The Dominion's warships activated in perfect unison. A display of sheer unmatched coordination. Their hulls shimmered as living circuits reconfigured, adapting in real time. Their weapons powered up, silent, precise, surgical. They did not prepare to fire. They had already won. The entire Terran fleet was at their mercy. Lysara studied Vasquez as if gauging the weight of the moment. Then, at last, she said what Vasquez feared most. "You came here believing yourselves superior." A pause. "Now you understand." Her voice was steady. "You are not the ones in control." Panic rippled through the hegemony fleet as reality set in. Their ships were dead. Engines silent, shields disabled, weapons offline. The Dominion hadn't fired a single shot. They hadn't needed to. Vasquez clenched her fists as the TSV reclaimer, once the pride of her fleet, drifted powerless in the void. The Dominion had seized control remotely, rewriting Terran systems as if they were toys. No enemy had ever done this. No one. Lysara. Caney stood motionless, watching Vasquez with calculating detachment. "You see now?" The High Chancellor's voice was quiet, unshaken. "Your hegemony believes itself the pinnacle of human civilization. Yet you stand here, stripped of your power, utterly helpless." She tilted her head slightly, considering. "Vasquez, the question remains, what do we do with you?" A chill ran through Vasquez. Not how to fight them. Not if they would fight them, but whether they would allow the hegemony to exist at all. In the chamber's dim glow, Vasquez caught movement, a flicker of hesitation in the Dominion's ranks. Lysara was in control, but not absolute control. Dr. Soren Patel saw it too. The historian, ever the observer, leaned in slightly. "You're not all in agreement, are you?" Lysara's gaze flickered to him, her expression unreadable. Patel pressed on. "Not everyone here wants war. Not everyone agrees with Admiral Valen, was it?" At the name, a subtle reaction among the Dominion officers. Muscle twitches, a brief darting of eyes. A name with weight. With fear, Vasquez took the gamble. "You're not the only power in this Dominion." Lysara's silence was confirmation enough. Vasquez exhaled. This was the crack she needed. They weren't invincible, not politically. She stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. "Let me speak to him." The Dominion guards tensed. Lysara's gaze hardened. "Admiral Valen does not negotiate." The chamber doors hissed open and the air seemed to tighten. Vasquez turned. A new presence strode in, tall, armored in a sleek black exoframe lined with pulsating blue circuitry. The man moved with unnatural fluidity, his every step controlled, almost predatory. His face bore no emotion, his eyes cold as deep space. Admiral Valen. His voice was as measured as his movements. "You're wasting time, Chancellor." Lysara did not so much as flinch. "This is not your decision, Admiral." Valen regarded Vasquez with clinical disinterest, as if she were already irrelevant. "You misunderstand the situation, Captain. This is not a war we must consider." A pause. "This is a war that has already begun." Vasquez's pulse quickened. "What have you done?" Valen's lips barely moved. "I sent a message." She felt the weight of his words before he even finished. "The hegemony's high command knows we exist now, and they will not wait. They will come. In force." His voice was absolute certainty, not arrogance. "And when they do..." A flicker of energy coursed through his exoframe, sparking in the dim light. "We will destroy them. Vasquez took a slow breath. This isn't a war, Valen. It will be. She shook her head. No. Not if we stop it here. Now. Lysara remained impassive, unreadable. Valen, however, took a step forward, his presence suffocating. You still believe in your hegemony, Captain? His voice carried something dangerous. Then let me show you what they have done. The chamber darkened. Another holographic projection bloomed to life, but this one was not history. It was classified. Intelligence. Terran High Command. Present day. Vasquez's breath caught. Operation Silent Chains. The hegemony had known. They had always known. A deep-seated, centuries-old plan, hidden in bureaucratic layers, locked away from the public. A directive buried so deep that not even her clearance had revealed it. The truth was simple. If the Eridani colony had survived, they were to be eliminated. Because an independent, advanced human civilization was a threat to hegemony control. Orsati's own people had come not to reconnect. They had come to assess whether they needed to wipe the Dominion out. Vasquez felt the weight crushing her. She had never been sent to negotiate. She had been sent to prelude a genocide. Silence thickened in the chamber. Vasquez forced herself to steady her breath. Valen watched her closely, his expression as unreadable as before. Do you understand now? She met his gaze. I do. And she did. She understood now why the Dominion had to be ruthless, why Valen would never trust Earth, because Earth had never deserved their trust. But she also understood something Valen did not, that this war could still be stopped. She turned to Lysara. If we fight, millions will die. You know that. But what if there's another way? Lysara's lips pressed into a thin line. Valen's voice cut through the moment. No. The chamber shook violently. Alarms blared. A Dominion officer rushed in, breathless. Hegemony warships approaching at FTL speeds. They were already here. Vasquez's stomach dropped. Valen's lips curled into the closest thing he had to a yaw. Smile. Then it begins. The Dominion warships moved first. Even as the Terran fleet breached the system, they were already surrounded. Vast formations of sleek, darkened vessels flanked them in the void. Predatory, waiting. The Dominion's ships were not just advanced. They were alive, adapting to the battlefield before the first shot was fired. Inside the command chamber, the tension was suffocating. The holographic map showed the Terran fleet arriving in force, dozens of capital ships blazing through slipspace, unaware that the Dominion's silent war machines had already rendered their systems vulnerable. High Chancellor Lysara Caney stood at the center, watching the inevitable unfold. Admiral Valen stood beside her, his exo-frame humming with restrained power, his voice cold and final. They will not leave this system alive. Vasquez's heart pounded. She could feel it. The moment history would fracture. Aboard the TSV Reclaimer, Lieutenant Kai Adama barked desperate orders. Weapons still offline, shields at 20%. Wait, something's wrong. Before he could finish, a single Dominion warship decloaked, its sleek obsidian hull reflecting the starlight like liquid metal. It didn't fire. It didn't have to. The Reclaimer's primary reactor suddenly surged. Alarms screamed. The crew scrambled to react, but it was too late. The ship's own systems had been hijacked. Across the fleet, Terran warships shuddered, their engines flickering, their targeting systems rerouted to dead zones. Vasquez saw it, happening in real time. Not a war, a demonstration. The Dominion could have destroyed them outright. Instead, they were showing their superiority, a calculated humiliation before the slaughter, and Valen would give the order soon, unless she stopped him. Vasquez turned to Lysara, her voice low, urgent. Call them off. Lysara's eyes flickered. With something dangerously close to uncertainty, Admiral Valen, however, moved forward, the movement of a predator before a kill. No. The time for hesitation is over. His exo-frame pulsed with energy, a storm brewing within his very veins. He was not merely a leader, he was a weapon, and he was about to unleash hell. Lysara spoke carefully. The Terrans are compromised. We could demand their surrender. Valen's voice sliced through the room. They will never surrender. He turned to Vasquez. And you know it. The truth was there. In the data. In the history they had all seen. The Terran High Command had always feared Eridani's survival. If they left now, they would return stronger. They would return to destroy the Dominion. To Valen, there was only one outcome. Vasquez's hands curled into fists. You don't have to do this. Valen's head tilted, almost curious. But we will. The first Dominion warship powered up its main cannon. Across the system, the hegemony ships detected the energy spike. They didn't wait for orders. They opened fire. Brilliant lances of plasma cut across the void, lighting up the battlefield. The Dominion's ships barely flinched, shifting their hulls dynamically, adjusting to the assault like a living organism. A counterattack began, but not as expected. The Dominion's ships didn't fire for destruction. They fired for control. Vasquez's fleet shuddered as Dominion weapons struck them without killing blows. Every blast disabled a core system, every pulse severed command pathways, precision, absolute control. And yet, the war had begun. Vasquez turned to Lysara, desperation bleeding into her voice. This is it. If we don't stop this now, there's no coming back. Lysara hesitated. A fraction of a second, and Valen saw it. The Admiral moved with inhuman speed, his exoframe blurring with kinetic force. His hand closed around Lysara's throat. Weakness is betrayal. Vasquez reacted before she could think. She lunged. Her fist collided with Valen's side, a blow that should have staggered any human, but he was not human anymore. Valen barely moved, his gaze turning to her as if seeing an insect attempting to bite steel. And then he struck. A single pulse of kinetic energy sent Vasquez crashing into the chamber's central console, cracking the surface. Pain shot through her ribs, but she forced herself to stand. He's not going to stop, she gasped, looking at Lysara. You have to make a choice. Lysara locked eyes with her, and for the first time Vasquez saw uncertainty shatter into resolve. Lysara moved without hesitation. Her hand activated an emergency override, and the chamber's security field erupted in energy. Valen's exoframe froze mid-motion. His enhanced form shuddered as the field overloaded his kinetic processors, locking him in place. For the first time, he looked surprised. Lysara stepped forward, voice like steel. You are relieved of command. Valen's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes burned with fury. You think you can stop this? His voice was no longer cold. It was promising retribution. Outside, the battle raged. Hegemony ships fought against forces they could not overcome. The Dominion's armada was seconds away from complete annihilation of the Terran fleet, but Lysara's voice cut through the chaos. A single override command broadcasted across all Dominion warships. Cease fire. The war stopped. Valen's forces hesitated. Their AI-driven systems faltered, awaiting new directives. Lysara had done it, and Vasquez barely had time to breathe before Valen's voice cut through the silence. This is a mistake. Lysara turned, her voice low, final. No, Admiral. The mistake was thinking we had no choice but war. Valen's gaze was unreadable, and then he vanished in a burst of energy, his exoframe activating an emergency teleport. Vasquez cursed. He was still out there, and he would never stop. The hegemony ships remained battered, stunned, but alive. The Dominion's forces stood down, but the rift within their leadership was now permanent. Lysara, breathing hard, turned to Vasquez. This is not over. Vasquez nodded, exhaustion weighing on her. No, but at least it's not over today. The war had been stopped, but only just. The aftermath hung heavy over the Eridani system. The once pristine void was now littered with the drifting wreckage of warships, Terran and Dominion alike. Some smoldered, their hulls ruptured from precise disabling strikes. Others simply floated, powerless, their crews likely still reeling from the battle that had nearly consumed them. On board the TSV reclaimer, Vasquez steadied herself against the flickering bridge controls. The battle had ended, but at what cost? In the Dominion's central chamber, Lysera Caney stood at the command console surveying the damage reports. Her people had obeyed her order. The Dominion's fleet had ceased fire, but many still questioned why. Her decision had fractured the Dominion. Valen's forces had withdrawn, but not disappeared. His warships had gone dark, breaking from the central fleet, taking loyalists with him. They would return, in time. But next time, it wouldn't be a war of hesitation. Lysera exhaled, closing her eyes for a fraction of a second. She had spent her life believing the Dominion's survival depended on never trusting Earth again. And yet standing here now, she had chosen something different. She had chosen uncertainty over destruction. Vasquez, now back in the chamber, stepped forward, her uniform scorched, her body aching. "We stopped it today," she said. "But you know this isn't the end." Lysera nodded, her voice quieter than before. "Valen won't stop." Vasquez clenched her jaw, "And neither will my people." The Terran High Command had never wanted peace. Even now she knew they would reassess, rebuild, and return. The next fleet would not come in diplomacy. It would come in force. Lysera studied her, searching for something. "You risked everything to stop this war, Captain." A pause. "Why?" Vasquez exhaled, glancing at the vast projection of space beyond them. "Because I'm tired of watching humanity tear itself apart." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lysera extended a hand, a gesture of something unspoken, not trust, not yet, but possibility. Vasquez took it, the first fragile bridge between two civilizations long at war with their own past. The surviving Terran ships began retreating from Eridani space, their systems still recovering from Dominion overrides. They would report what had happened, and their leaders would decide. Lysera watched the fleet vanish into the void, her expression unreadable. Beside her, a Dominion strategist spoke cautiously. "They will return." She nodded. "And so will he." Valen was out there. Somewhere. And when he returned, he wouldn't come with hesitation. He would bring a war designed to end the hegemony forever. Aboard the TSV reclaimer, Vasquez prepared her final report. She stared at the blank transmission screen, knowing what command expected her to say. She was supposed to label the Dominion as a rogue state, to recommend immediate military action. She was supposed to say they were a threat. Instead, she typed a single line. "The Dominion is not our enemy. But if we force them to be, we will not survive what comes next." She hesitated, then sent it. And with that, she changed everything. A war had been avoided. For now. But in the vastness of space, forces were already moving. The hegemony was preparing. Valen was preparing. And somewhere in the depths of the Dominion, the question remained, would humanity ever truly unite, or was the worst yet to come? Far beyond the Eridani system, in the uncharted reaches of space, a single Dominion warship drifted through the dark. Its hull was black as the abyss, absorbing all light, rendering it nearly invisible. A ship that should not exist. A ship that had disappeared from the Dominion's fleet the moment the ceasefire was called. Inside, standing before a command console lit with streams of shifting data, was Admiral Valen. His expression remained unreadable, but the gleam in his augmented eyes spoke of a certainty Lysera had abandoned. He had seen the weakness in her, and he had seen the truth in Vasquez. The hegemony was a dying beast, clinging to power it no longer deserved, and the Dominion, under Lysera's rule, would hesitate. He would not. His voice, deep and unwavering, echoed through the silent bridge. "Begin Phase 1. The command was received. Deep in the ship's core, something stirred. A network, ancient and forbidden, awakened. A system hidden even from Lysera's control. And As Valen watched the data stream shift, he allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The war had not ended. It had simply begun in a different way. Back on Earth, in the marble halls of Terran High Command, the response to Vasquez's report was swift. Her warning that the Dominion was not their enemy, but that war would be their downfall, was met with silence, then with dismissal, and then with preparations. The old leaders, the ones who had allowed the abandonment of Eridani, would not change now. The hegemony's fleets would return. But this time they would not come as explorers. They would come to reclaim or to destroy. Aboard the TSV Reclaimer, Vasquez stood alone in her quarters, staring at the endless expanse beyond the viewport. The stars had always felt like freedom to her. Now, they felt like a cage. She had spent her life believing in humanity's strength, in its capacity for unity. But now, for the first time, she wasn't sure if humanity deserved to survive what was coming. The Dominion had surpassed them, and if war was inevitable, she wasn't sure who should win. Her communicator flickered to life. An encrypted message. Unknown sender. A single word. Prepare. Her breath caught, and she knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning.